We're looking at the survey and timeless truths of Obadiah, a native survey of the Old Testament, all 39 books by Robert D. Corah. The survey of the book of Obadiah. The human writer of the book of Obadiah is attributed to the person whose name it bears. Obadiah means servant of the Lord. The setting of the book of Obadiah. Obadiah's prophecy concerns the animosity between Edom and the southern kingdom of Judah. The Edomites were descendants of Esau, the first of the twin boys born to Isaac and Rebekah. Genesis 25, verses 24 to 26. Therefore, the Edomites were related to the Jews, the descendants of Jacob, the second of the twin boys. Like their ancestors Esau, the Edomites were rugged, fierce, and proud warriors. Throughout their history, the Edomites displayed a bitter animosity toward the Jews. No kings are mentioned in the book of Obadiah, which makes establishing the time period of the book somewhat difficult. The book records an occasion when the Edomites refused to help when Judah was invaded. See Obadiah 10 to verse 14. The only historical event described in the book. Instead of coming to the aid of the Jews, they gloated over Judah's problems, captured and delivered Jewish fugitives to the enemies, and even looted parts of Judah. Now the theme of the book of Obadiah. The theme of the book of Obadiah is a declaration of the coming judgment of God upon Edom because of their arrogance and cruelty toward Judah. The key verse in the book of Obadiah: For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. Obadiah chapter verse 10. Summary of the content of the book of Obadiah. The book of Obadiah describes an alliance against Judah in which the Edomites took the side of the enemy. And the book of Obadiah may be divided into two main sections. 1. God's judgment of Edom, Obadiah, verses 1 through verse 16. 2. God's restoration of Israel, Obadiah, chapter 17 through verse 21. God's judgment of Edom, Obadiah 1 through verse 16. The Edomites were proud because of their seemingly secure geographical location. The pride of thine heart hath deceived thee. Thou that dwellest in the cliffs of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, Who shall bring me down to the ground? Obadiah verse 3. However, God declared that the Edomites will be destroyed. Through Obadiah, God declares to the Edomites what they should not have done when Jerusalem was invaded. 1. The Edomites should not have looked down on the Israelites nor rejoiced arrogantly over the Israelites' troubles. Obadiah verse 12. 2. The Edomites should not have participated in the looting of Jerusalem. Obadiah, verse 13. 3. The Edomites should not have assisted the foreign invaders by capturing surviving Jews who tried to escape and handing them over to the foreign invaders. Obadiah, verse 14. God's judgment would come upon Edom, sided with Judah's enemy instead of with Judah, and because Edom rejoiced over the defeat of Judah. Obadiah, verse 10. Now, God's restoration of Israel, Obadiah, verses 17 to 21. God would restore his people to the point where they would control a great amount of territory, including the lands of Edom and Philistia, much of which they had never occupied before, and he would judge all nations. Now, interesting features related to the book of Obadiah. Obadiah is the shortest book in the Old Testament with just one chapter. The book of Obadiah is addressed primarily to a foreign nation, Edom. See Obadiah 1, not Israel. Though coming from twin brothers Esau and Jacob, the nations of Edom and Israel became bitter, relentless enemies. The animosity began with the root of bitterness between Esau and Jacob, Hebrews 12, verses 15 to 17. The two boys were eventually reconciled, Genesis 33, but their descendants manifested a national hatred that was never reconciled. So watch your bitter family fights. Now, interesting features, significant dates in the conflict between the Edomites and Israelites. 1406 BC, the Edomites refused to let the Israelites pass through on the way to Canaan, Numbers 20, verses 14 to 21. In 992 BC, David conquered Edom, slaying most of the males, 2 Samuel 8, verse 13, 1 Kings 11, verse 15. 860 BC, Edom along with Moab and Ammon attacked Judah, but Edom was destroyed by its allies, Moab and Ammon, after Jehoshaphat called to the Lord, 2 Chronicles chapter 20. In 847 BC, Edom revolted against Judah, setting up its own king, 2 Chronicles 21 verse 8. Now in 845 BC, Edom and the Philistines looted Judah, 2 Chronicles 21 verse 16 to 17. Then in 785 BC, King Amaziah of Judah attacked Edom, killing 20,000 men, 2 Chronicles 25 verses 11 to 12. In 735 BC, Edom revolted against Judah, taking many captives, 2 Chronicles 28 verse 17. 586 BC, Edom aided Babylon in destroying Jerusalem, for which they were allowed to settle in southern Judah, Psalms 137 verse 7, Ezekiel chapter 25 verse 12. Edom was later controlled by Assyria and Babylon. In the 5th century BC, the Edomites were forced to leave their territory by the Cans, who lived in northern Arabia. Malachi chapter 1 verses 3 to 5. The Edomites then moved to the area of southern Palestine known as Idumea, the Greek name for the southern Judea, and became known as the Idumeans. In 37 BC, an Idumean known as Herod the Great became king of Judea, which was under Roman rule. It was Herod who ordered all the baby boys killed after the Lord Jesus Christ was born, Matthew chapter 2, verse 16 to 18. Herod Antipas, the son of Herod the Great, had John the Baptist killed, Matthew 14, verses 3 to 11. Sought to kill the Lord Jesus Christ, Luke 13, verse 31. And cruelly humiliated Jesus at his trial, Luke 23, verses 8 to 12. Herod Antipas I, the grandson of Herod the Great and cousin of Herod Antipas, killed James and tried to kill Peter, Acts chapter 12, 1 to 10. After 70 AD, the Idumeans faded from history and were never heard from again. As Obadiah had prophesied, they were cut off, Obadiah, verse 10. Judgment against Edom is mentioned in more Old Testament books than any other foreign nation. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Joel, Amos, Malachi would all prophesy. Timeless universal truths in Obadiah. 1. There are long-lasting, devastating results of favoritism shown toward children by parents. Isaac loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Genesis 25, verse 28. This pride and arrogance are serious sins. God despises them. The Edomites are one of the clearest biblical examples that pride goes before destruction, and an haughty spirit before a fall. Proverbs 16, verse 18. Instead of trying to exalt yourself, you need to humble yourself. God gives grace unto the humble. Humble yourself in the sight of the Lord, and he shall lift you up. James 4, verse 6 says. Be clothed with humility, for God resists the proud and gives grace to the humble. Humble yourself, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due season. 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 5 and verse 6. Resist the feelings of superiority to those who are experiencing difficulty. Do not take advantage of them. During trouble experienced by the inhabitants of Judah, the Edomites took advantage of them. God punished the Edomites as a result. To oppose God's people, Israel, is to oppose God himself. I just heard about Iran sending missiles against Israel, and once again, they that bless thee will be blessed, they that curse thee will be cursed. Ezekiel 38:39 shaping up. Now God condemned the Edomites' treachery toward their Jewish relatives, declared he would destroy the Edomites, OBADIAH, verse 18, and declared that Edom's land would be given to Judah in the day when God rights the wrongs against his people, OBADIAH 19. You can be assured that God takes sides against those who oppose his people. Every enemy, whether a nation or an individual of God's people, will ultimately be destroyed. Now here's a chart of interesting facts regarding OBADIAH, and I'd encourage you to look at this. There's 6 life lessons learned from the book of OBADIAH. Those who persecuted God's people in the Bible were always brought to justice. Likewise, those who are hostile to the Christians today can expect to face God's judgment. When you see harm being inflicted upon fellow Christians, you should not worsen the situation by abandoning them, but rather come to their aid. Take no pleasure in the misfortunes of others. Pride and self-centeredness will reap destruction. God has the power to annihilate an entire nation of people. A short book or sermon can have a powerful message from God. And I'll just say from personal experience, having pastored 30 years, it's not gone without every pastor having somebody getting up in a rile. And I've often asked people, well, why don't you stand against them and stand for a man of God? Now, interesting facts about the prophets. Here you can look at them, and you can see that Obadiah was one of the prophets who spoke against Edom. They're the prophets before the exile, and prophets during the exile, and prophets after the exile. And Obadiah would be prior to the exile. Now, nativemi.org, you can find all 39 books of the Old Testament with native artwork and a native outlook teaching the survey of the Old Testament. Thank you, Rich Costanza, for the notes to be taught. Now, here is a survey, and we see the Obadiah here during that time. A brief chronology of the entire Bible, and we find Obadiah here. And then we see the Old Testament periods and peoples. Now, you'll see Obadiah in the list, and then there, take your phone and look at the homework for Obadiah. Now, there is a video showing the development of Jerusalem, how it progressed over time, and also the building of the temple. It also shows the coming judgments these prophets prophesied against. Here's an overview of the Old Testament. plus a family tree from Adam to Jesus, which you'll find very interesting. A master list of all the homework for the 39 books of the Bible that we study. You can find this at nativemi.org. My name is Robert D. Corah, robertdcorah@gmail.com. You can also find it on Right Now Media if you'd like to find that in a more orderly way.